Kentucky walked into Nashville on Saturday night and proved to everybody that sometimes this offense just goes nuclear and there's nothing you can do about it.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, writer for various SEC-related things, but on this podcast, we take a dive into all things Kentucky athletics. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can make every moment more, and new customers, if you join today, you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. You can visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. On today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be recapping Kentucky basketball's 109, yes, you heard me correctly, to 77 victory over the Vanderbilt Commodores. Talk about the good, the bad, what we saw in this game overall. I think it was just an impressive performance from the Wildcats, and we got to see some pieces in this one that we maybe normally don't get to see. Thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. And if you're watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribed to the show. If you're listening on podcast, I would appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Again, 109-77 was the final score. Ken Palm had Kentucky winning this game by 11. Vegas had Kentucky winning this game by 8.5 or 9.5 points, depending on where you looked. I said on the preview episode earlier today that Kentucky was going to break 90 in this one. I said I did not see why this matchup was going to be so close. I thought Kentucky could get out and run, and their guards would just simply outproduce Vanderbilt's. And at the end of the day, Vanderbilt's two best guards scored 14 and 20, led their team in scoring, and yet Kentucky still outperformed them. They got out and they ran, and they shot very efficiently for the entire day, but especially in that first half. Very impressive what Kentucky was able to do on offense, but as we said in the preview episode, Vanderbilt is the worst team in the SEC, and therefore they're going to struggle. Now, the thing I want to dive into here before we get to any of the positives on offense about Kentucky scoring 109, how it happened, why Vanderbilt kind of collapsed there throughout the entire game, I want to address what we also discussed in the preview episode, talking about holding teams to underneath 80 points, 75, 70-ish points. I said Kentucky was going to win this game 92-75. They won it 109-77. And Vanderbilt had to get to the charity stripe to push that to 77 points. Now, Kentucky did a lot of fouling, but there was a lot of things called in this game, and it just allowed Vanderbilt to get to the charity stripe. That's kind of what they do. That's where they go to get their points, at least statistically. They're top 50 in the country in free throw percentage when it comes to their point distribution. They get some points from the charity stripe from time to time, and Kentucky just simply boat raced them. I do want to credit Kentucky's defense statistically for outside of what they did on the foul line, committing fouls, I should say. They stepped up and they played some pretty solid defense. Vanderbilt only shot 35% from the floor. They shot 32% from deep. Again, 22 of 30 from the foul line. I think the only other negative here that I would get to is the fact that Vanderbilt had 14 second chance points, although I will say there were so many different rebounds that just kind of careened in random directions that allowed Vanderbilt to get some of those second chance points that you don't necessarily fault Kentucky for not being in position, because they were in position if the ball had bounced at least somewhat normally. So I think that the way Kentucky played defense tonight against a bad offense was good. The bad offense played bad. Kentucky did not allow themselves to get beat by playing terrible defense. I thought it was good defense this time around, albeit against one of the worst offenses in this conference. But still, they were able to get out there and get it done. Something else I also want to point out is the fact that Kentucky was able to rebound the basketball pretty darn well. And again, this is something that Vanderbilt struggles with on both ends of the floor. But Kentucky, again, athleticism, length, able to grab a lot of defensive rebounds, 32 defensive rebounds as opposed to the Commodores' 15. That's a part of the game that I think sometimes gets blown by here, especially when talking about Kentucky and their pace and their offense and how they like to score and this, that, and the other. You forget about rebounding sometimes. Kentucky's not been great at that this season. May have an episode here discussing what may make them or could have made them better this year at rebounding the basketball. But still, I thought the defensive effort was not bad. I thought it was okay, and Vanderbilt, who is not keen to hitting shots from time to time, just did not go and shoot lights out. They did get a lot of shots up, as did Kentucky, and they were able to hit 11 threes, 11 of 34 from beyond the arc. They were chucking them up there. And again, with the Wildcats and the way they play the game, you're going to have higher point totals in these games, in these normal type of games for Kentucky, because of the way they play with their pace. It gives opponents more possessions. Kentucky in this game had 30 fast break points. 30. As opposed to Vanderbilt's 6. We noted in the preview episode, Vanderbilt's offense, slower, more methodical, does not distribute the basketball well. They only had 14 assists in this game as opposed to Kentucky's 22. They were not able to get things done when Kentucky wanted to get out and run. It did not mean for that to rhyme, but you get the point here. The speed and the athleticism and the three-point shooting for Kentucky just kind of outmanned Vanderbilt there alone. But I want to give credit here to the defense for stepping up and I think making some good plays in this game, especially I think in that first half where they were able to just kind of get out and control things. So I want to dive into some of the things that we saw on offense in this one as well. What was impressive from these different guys and some things that we saw from players that we normally don't get to see. Before I dive into all of that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday, which is coming up this weekend, I've been talking to friends about it. It's all about getting some snacks, getting those friends, getting the best seat on the couch, and placing down some super awesome bets, because right now FanDuel has so many different ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58 between the 49ers and the Chiefs, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown. If you're feeling frisky about a specific receiver or tight end or running back that you think is going to get in on the action. If you want to bet on how many points will be scored as well, if you want to go high, if you want to go low, so many more things on top of that. If you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and sign up, if you join today, you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Again, FanDuel.com/lockedon. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. You can make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, continuing along here on what is technically the Tuesday edition of Locked On Kentucky Part 2, second episode in the same day. Does not happen very often here at Locked On Kentucky, but Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. I appreciate you guys checking out the show today. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please go ahead and do so. Going to have a really interesting end to the season. Got a big game on Saturday, and we needed this one to kind of build some momentum into that. Again, 109-77 is the final score here between the Commodores of Vanderbilt and the Kentucky Wildcats. Going to continue along here with our thought and analysis of this final score. We talked about the defense. Statistically, I think it performed well. There are a couple of things that you can be frustrated at, but overall, bad offense played bad. Bad defense looked okay because of that, and the offense was able to kind of translate as a whole. The Kentucky Wildcats offense was able to kind of translate as a whole and just dominate this one whenever they did get stops. Speaking of that offense, we've not talked about the individual numbers here. Let's start from the top and work our way to the specifics. In the first half, Kentucky scored 54 points. Second half, 55. Really balanced scoring there for a 109-point total. They shot 55% from the floor, 58% from three, and made all 12 of their free throws. Beautiful. There is nothing else to say other than beautiful. Vanderbilt coughed up the ball 12 times. Kentucky converted it into 21 points of offense. Part of that obviously being in that fast break point total. But Kentucky shot well from the floor. They shot really good, or really well from three, and especially in that first half. And they got out and ran. This is what they do best. This is what they're going to continue to do well throughout the rest of this season. Now, there will be lumps in the road like we've seen over these past couple of weeks, but this was a showing tonight where you had a bad opponent and you executed. This is the way that Kentucky looks against lesser competition. That's just how it is at the end of the day. I hope that's not clipped whenever Kentucky faces off against a lower seed in March Madness and they lose. I hope that that does not happen now that I've spoken that into existence. It's difficult sometimes on this show to have some takes and then to look back at them and be like, okay, well, on paper, you weren't wrong. It's just surprising that this other thing happened. Oh, well, can't help it sometimes. Antonio Reeves led the day with 24 points on 9 of 16 shooting, 6 of 9. Nice from beyond the arc. Had 6 rebounds, 2 assists as well in 31 minutes of play. Rob Dillingham also continued his hot shooting. 20 points, 7 of 12 shooting, was 4 of 5 from beyond the arc. Had 9 assists. 9 of Kentucky's 22 assists. I know he's not coming back. Man, I'd like to have him for one more year. It would be so nice to have Rob Dillingham for one more year. It's just kind of that bucket getter. Unfortunately, this kid's making his way into the lottery and maybe further up the board. So Rob Dillingham, another excellent scoring performance tonight. Aaron Bradshaw got into the mix. Jordan Burks got into the mix. Zvonimir Ivisic got into the mix. And Justin Edwards also scoring in double figures. That's what I want to wrap up the show with here today. Those 4 guys, Edwards, Bradshaw, Burks, Ivisic. Burks has hardly played so far this season because Kentucky has kind of built some depth there at the forward position, even when they've had injuries, especially tonight with Trey Mitchell being out. DJ Wagner being out tonight, by the way. Didn't even mention that. Burks has not been able to play. Finished with 13 points on 6 of 6 shooting. Made his only outside shot. It was a really good night. It was effort. It was a lot of effort and diving for the ball and playing with energy and excitement and passion. I liked what I saw out of Jordan Burks. And again, we've talked about this. We talked about this whenever he committed. He fits his role so well. I think he's a good kid. I think he plays well. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does as a piece for future years on this team, because I think he, alongside guys like Adu Thiero, will be glue guys. I think next year is going to be an opportunity for him to develop a little bit more. We saw some offensive game during his time during high school, right before he was able to commit to the Wildcats. Got to see some handles, some different things. Maybe he starts to show out a little bit as a forward who used to play guard during his time in high school ranks. So Jordan Burks, 13 points, wanted to shout him out. Also, Zvonimir Ivisic, he did foul out in this game, but he had 7 rebounds, 11 points on 5 of 7 shooting, had 2 assists in just 12 minutes of play. If this kid is able to stay out of foul trouble, he will be borderline unstoppable. 7'2", can run the floor. Would like to see a little bit more physicality out of him, but I think that will come with just simply being on campus more often and getting kind of back to that weight that he was at before he started coming to the United States and playing basketball. But Ivisic also played really well, made his only 3-point shot. Justin Edwards. How about this from Justin Edwards? 17 points, 5 of 10 shooting, 1 of 3 from beyond the arc, made all of his 6 free throws, had 3 assists to go on top of that in 20 minutes of action. Justin Edwards looked really good tonight. Again, it's about these guys filling their lane and playing their style of basketball when given the opportunity. Not trying to ball hog, not trying to shoot the lights out, although some kids can really light it up on this team. Edwards filled his role and when given touches, executed, both in the fast break and within sets in the offense in the half court, where he was able to explode to the rim and finish with authority. You got to love that windmill dunk in there, by the way, after picking up that steal. Edwards, I thought, had a great night, as did Aaron Bradshaw, who had 12 points and 7 rebounds. Again, it's about in 18 minutes. It's about effort. These guys played hard tonight. I liked the effort that I saw from this team. They earned their 109 points, and I'm really proud of the direction that they're going after those 2 losses to Florida and Tennessee. You've got to be able to pick up the pace and get a win against one of these better opponents. And you've got a couple more here. Gonzaga, Mississippi. You got 2 games here that you're supposed to win, according to metrics. Let's see if you can get it done and play a little bit better on the defensive end. So That's my take for this game. I love the effort. I love the offense. I love the defense. I think relative to some of the other games that we've seen so far this season. Let me know what you think about this game in the comments below. I think that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hey, you can follow the show on Twitter at LockedOnUK. You can follow me on Twitter at LanceDawe_ and follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, you can leave those in the YouTube comments below, or you can hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Have a great rest of your day, and God bless.